very, very, very important part of your preparation. We have to remember that it is, the exam weight is weighted towards this section. I've told you all year how important it is. It's worth 100 marks, double studied poetry, 40 marks more than your single text. For most of you, that's Hamlet, 30 marks more than comparative. It's so important. So, the idea you can't study for it, as I've said to you all year, is a bloody nonsense. So let's have a quick scan through what to expect with the composition challenge, okay? So, we know, that this is a genre, language task. So the expectation is that, look, if you pick a feckin', short story, you're going to display narrative skills and aesthetic skills. If you pick a personal essay, you're going to have some knowledge of effective personal writing and so on. So remember, here, you should be thinking as much about how you write as what you write. So many students just, and look, if you're looking to get, a 5 or a 4, which is at any score, a higher level is a good score. If you look at a 5 or a 4, great piece of advice: write loads. Just write loads and answer the bloody question as best you can. But if you're looking to get into those elite grades, the 3s and above, there has to be control over the way you write. You have to demonstrate some sense of understanding of language. So I think that's just vitally important. You don't have to write loads. I mean, obviously, it's worth 100 marks, so you want a substantial essay. Talk about what that means in a moment. But it's the quality of the way you write, the planning, the structure, the coherence. These are things that really matter. In terms of questions that get asked, we can't guarantee anything, but the pattern of the last umpteen years says there will be a personal essay, there will be a speech, there will be a short story, and there's likely to be 2 of one of them. So what I mean, like 2 personal essays or 2 speeches or 2 short stories. I don't think there'll be 2 speeches. There has been a pattern of I think I was trying to think back there. I think it's for the last 5 years in a row there's been 2 personal essays, simply because the personal essay is really, really popular. And so I think they're trying to just get a little bit of variety in by offering 2 options. There's no guarantee that there will be 2 personal essay options. There's no guarantee the personal essay option will suit you. There will also likely be a discursive essay. A descriptive essay is less likely to be on than maybe in previous years. Although there was one last year, they just dressed it up as a magazine article. So just have a look out. And of course, if you're a good descriptive writer, that can help you write a short story. It can make your anecdotes in your personal essay much more interesting. It can add a bit of colour to a speech. So there might not be a write a descriptive essay, but you'll be able to use those skills elsewhere if there's not. The magazine article is kind of I might do a little video on this over the next couple of days. It's a really kind of unpredictable title. Will there be one? Probably. What type of writing it requires is unpredictable. As I said, last year the magazine article was essentially a flipping descriptive essay. The year before that was like a discursive essay. The year before that was more a personal essay. You just have to put the format, or it's like a question B task. There have been dialogue tasks. Some of you might love drama. I would avoid them, run away really fast. So that's what to expect. What do we know? We know that if you're going to write a speech, you should have a good understanding of persuasive writing, rhetorical writing. You know that if you're going to write a personal essay, you should have studied personal essay writing. If you're going to write a discursive essay, you need to understand the fundamentals of an interesting argument. If you're going to look at writing a short story, and so on. We know that. When thinking about the type of writing that you're going to produce, try to reframe the style question in the reading comprehension passages. You know those questions where you're asking, do you think this is a good piece of writing? Do you think that this author has used narrative skills effectively. Well, that's what I'm looking at, or an examiner's looking at when they're reading your short story. Do you think the author, the writer, employed persuasive skills effectively? Well, if you're writing a speech, that's what I'm doing. I'm going, okay, well, did you use persuasive skills? Are you showing me evidence of the study of rhetoric? Do you know how to introduce and grab my attention? You know, if you're writing a descriptive essay, do you know how to stimulate my senses? So these are the things that when I'm reading when an examiner's reading your response to the composition, I'm not as interested. Obviously, you have to be purposeful. You have to be on the question. And that's where rote learning, a lot of people think that rote learning is a kind of a smart move here. I absolutely don't think that's the case. But then everybody's entitled to their opinions. I got a message from somebody today say that they've been told by somebody to to write paragraphs that were 2 pages long. You know, never heard of such a thing in my life. But anyway, different teachers have different approaches. But the crucial thing is, you know, think before you write. You've got upwards of 70 minutes to do this work, or even 80 minutes. Careful in your choice. Plan out and try to be a bit creative. Just remember, this is the reason that they give. I don't want to go off tack here. Many, many, many years ago, when I was young and had, you know, hope for the future, as I like to joke, I attended a training day for English teachers. And of course, being young, I thought I knew everything. It's only when you get older you realise you know nothing. And I remember having a conversation. It was in Navan, having a conversation with a teacher who probably had 25 years more experience than me. And I remember just realising, I need to shut up here and listen to her. She was brilliant. I don't know who the hell she was, but she was brilliant. And I remember saying to her that I felt at the time it was unfair that the weighting gave 100 marks to composition, but only 50 marks to poetry, when there's so much work in poetry. I'm being surprised by her like passionate defence of that. How the composition is the student's chance to write in their own voice, to show their personality, to be creative. And of course, the older I get now, the more I realise she was 100% correct and I was an idiot. Don't get me wrong, I love the poetry. And I still think that there's an imbalance somewhere there. But this is your opportunity to be interesting. And I know you might go, oh, don't want to do that, Paul. There's nothing interesting about me. But like if you're pitching at high grades, the expectation is you're going to show imagination, creativity, originality. They put that in the marking scheme. See that phrase there, originality and freshness? That's in the marking scheme for every composition. Every composition, it says to the examiner purpose, and it gives all the breakdown. If it's a personal essay, if it's a speech, if it's a short story, these are things to expect. And then the last thing it says is originality and freshness. So don't be afraid of being original. Don't be afraid of being creative. Don't be afraid of being slightly, you know, off, left of centre, or quirky in the way you write. Some of the best writers are like that. Just be controlled. Demonstrate learning in terms of your, you know, if you're writing a short story, bit of tension, dialogue, you know, characterization, setting, description. If you're writing a speech, you know, rhetorical questions and, you know, audience awareness and, you know, the provision of evidence. If you're, you know, demonstrate knowledge, but be creative. Don't be afraid of being creative. You know, this is a chance to do it. I love that quote from Albert Einstein. Creativity is seeing what others see and thinking what no one else ever thought. So a great example of that was a couple of years ago when the personal essay was about objects that are faithful companions. I think that was the line. And famously, everybody wrote about their fucking mobile phone and you know, torture. But then you come across a student who writes something interesting about the phone, something not predictable, something that allows them to open up a discussion about, who they are as a person. And suddenly you go, wow, that's really interesting. So they've taken something that might be, it's like, music. A lot of music, in terms of the composition of the music, is predictable. But the lyric that the artist creates can make a connection in a way that somebody else can't. It's individual. When you're doing your composition, here's my, these are ideas. Open with a quote. Open with a quote from something you prepared for paper 2. Could be interesting, but make sure you tie the quote into, your discussion or whatever you're doing in your story or in your composition. Read. Brilliant book. Okay? I highly recommend you to read just in your life. It's the Granta Book of Irish Short Story, and the great, and I'd love to meet her and shake her hand, tell her I think she rocks the house, Anne Enright, edited it and put the introduction together. What a writer she is, Anne Enright. But that's a brilliant short story book. It's got some of the, Roddy Doyle is in it, and Anne Devlin and Val Mulcairns and Patrick Boyle and Kevin Barry. This Claire Keegan has a brilliant story called Men and Women in it. So if you're going to write a short story, read bloody short stories over the next week. If you're going to write personal essay, read some of the personal essay samples I gave you, or your teacher's given you if you're not in my classes. If you're going to write a discursive essay, read some journalism. If you're going to write a speech, read some, speeches. Be aware, be well read. Don't try to learn stuff off by heart. Be well read. Practice writing paragraphs. Yeah, that's a good idea. In terms of short story, character sketches, sentence descriptions that can be slotted in. A lot of people do that, and I think it can be very effective. And then make sure you don't leave it short. I think 1,000 words is your bare minimum for your composition. But then the other side of it, some students write feckin' essays that are 8, 9, 10 pages long. No examiner wants to read an essay that's fucking 8, 9, 10 pages long. No examiner wants to. It smacks of somebody who lacks control. Now again, don't panic. Oh, I always write 10 pages. My teacher says it's brilliant. Deep breaths this time of the year. Don't panic. You're going to hear a lot of bullshit maybe from me as well over the next few days. Just be calm. But you don't need to write. They don't need to be tomes, these essays. But they need to be substantial. The vast majority of you are going to write somewhere around 6 pages of the answer booklet. Average sized handwriting. It's going to come in at about 1,200 words. That's loads. And it's practical in the time, because it gives you, write slowly, reread after every paragraph, clean as you go, take pride in your work. Watch out for the basic stuff, your punctuation. And you'll do brilliant. I know you will. You'll do brilliant. Good luck.